in this email, we have two questions, and I've broken the questions apart in this presentation, but they have to do with the 14th month and Psalms 81. Let's begin to take this apart. The writer says, there is no 13th month actually written in the scripture. Right. So what would happen if you added a 13th month, but come the next month, the first month and the 14th day, there is still no signs of Abib? I know it's unlikely, but it's something that came to mind this year. Yeah, it has come to mind for me as well, for a certain group that has declared that this month that we're currently in, that we're currently approaching, will be their Passover, and that they're sure that the barley will be Aviv. Aviv, I am not. So I understand your concern, and I understand where that question could have come from. But let's break it down. And I want to let you know that the scripture never talks about the number of months that are required. The only thing it says it requires to start the year, as you know, is the Abib. And this is so significant because he tells us that we're to wait for that to start the year. It's really that simple. If we didn't have it in the 13th month and we approached the 14th month and it still wasn't ready, if we still didn't have flax, if we still didn't have wheat above the earth without its fruiting head showing, if we still didn't have barley that was Abib, I would have to wait for it. All of our verses that tell us about the beginning of the year is attached to this term Aviv. And in fact, in Exodus 12:1, 12:2, after we've looked at all these verses about Aviv, it says, this Chodesh shall be the Reshit Chodesh, the first month of the Shana. So the head of the year, it's actually saying. So basically, this is the only verse in all of Scripture all Scripture that's in Bible, all from Genesis to Revelation. I want to be clear of that. This is the only location you have the two words Rosh and Shana together. We are very familiar with this term if we know what Israel does in the 7th month. They have called that one Rosh Hashanah. But it's only in Exodus 12:2 that we see Rosh as the beginning and Shana as year together in a single verse. So Rosh Hashanah is based on the Abib. The second part of that question is, have you dug into Psalms 83:1? The verse came up in my studies recently, and when comparing the verse in English, there are many variations. It says to blow the shofar at the start of every new moon, full moon feast. She doesn't know, she's asking. Or is it speaking of a specific appointed time? Or after digging in, I wondered if it was speaking of blowing the shofar at the appointed time, Pesach Matzah, that start the year, and appointed time that end the year, Sukkot. To further extend my thinking here, the root of Yom, day, can mean year as well. I'll speak about that a little later on. It means hot, so it makes sense that Pesach or Sukkot is the warmest part of the year. Pesach is not the warmest part of the year. Sukkot is not the warmest part of the year. There's a couple months earlier than that. These are the only feast times that have full moons. I have so many thoughts, and it doesn't seem the translation of the verse is clear. Blowing the shofar to start the month makes sense because it would alert the people that the sliver is observed. Numbers 10:10 speaks of blowing at the new moon, but that is a silver trumpet, I believe. Maybe not. I'll have to double check that. It's been a while. This got me thinking about you allowing until the 10th day to inspect barley. If the shofar is blown on the first day of the month to alert the month starting, when would they have blown again on the 10th? Would the people have had time to prepare? Should the barley be observed in Abib prior to the month starting. Okay, so first of all, let me just address this last little part. I do not try to replicate what they do in the first century. For me, I'm a single person searching the land of Israel, and I give myself the allowance that I might find something I had not seen before and that should start the year. That's what I'm doing. I'm not trying to replicate what they would have done when there was a temple or when there was a tabernacle. I don't also believe that we're talking about blowing a shofar at the beginning of the first month. Let's get into some of the scripture here. Interestingly, Psalms 81:3 is Psalms 81:4 in the Hebrew version of the Bible. And what I have done here is I have taken each word and I have given the meaning of each word from Hebrew. And it was really rather interesting. I have not done this before in quite this manner. And it was really rather interesting. And it says, Teku b'chodesh shofar b'kisei layom hagnu. So to blow up in the month a shofar in the covering or plumping up, that's what kisei means, to a day. So we're covering and we're plumping up a day of your hog. Now, the thought was is that day could also mean year. When you look at the Strong's Concordance, I did see at the bottom of the list of possibilities that Mr. Strong's had, it did say a year, but it is literally only the italicized words that have the real meaning of what the Hebrew word is. And those three meanings are be hot, day, and warm. And in English, that same verse is very convoluted, as the writer mentions. It says, blow up the trumpet in the new moon in the time appointed on our solemn feast. And actually here, this should say, this was the transliteration, but this should say in the new month. That should still be in the new month. So please forgive my error right here. Chodesh can be used for month, but in this context, I'm going in the new moon for various reasons we'll get to. So blow up in the new moon a shofar in the covering to the day of your hog. King James, blow up the trumpet in the new moon in the appointed time on our solemn feast. So this covering or plumping up of a day, when is the day or the sun that constitutes the day covered up? Remember in Genesis, he made the greater light to delineate between the lesser night. The greater light, the sun, constituted the daytime, and the lesser light, the moon, constituted the nighttime. So when is the sun plumped up, concealed, or covered up? We find it in Psalms 19:4. Their line has gone out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. In them he has set a tent, an ohel, for the sun. When the sun would go into the tent, it would be concealed or covered up, which the sun is as a bridegroom coming out of his chuppah, or his chamber, or his canopy, and rejoiceth as a strong man for the earth. So when the sun sets, he is as one who goes into a tent, and when it rises, it is as the bridegroom coming out of his canopy or his veil. It is in the nighttime that the day is covered or concealed. Then Psalm 96 goes on and says, his going forth is to the end of the heaven, and his circuit into the end of it. And there is nothing hid from the heat thereof. So again, we have this connotation of yom, of hot, of being hot. Further, we're going to see here what it says in Hebrew from the transliteration word by word. Blow up a shofar on the new moon when the day is concealed, which would be at night, on your Hag, on your reoccurring feast. It's Numbers 29:1, I think, is the answer to Psalms 83. It says, in the seventh month, on the first day, you shall have a convocation. You shall do no work. It is a day of teruah unto you. So this idea of blowing up taku and teruah have the same root word. In fact, it's in Psalms 104:19. He writes, he appointed, that is made, he made the moons for the Moedim. The Moedim do not follow the moon, but he made the Moedim for, he made the moon for the Moedim. Every Hag, every Moedim we have starts in Erev because that's when a day begins. Erev and Boker, evening and morning, they were how Elohim counted the days in Genesis. Then it says, additionally to this idea of being concealed, the sun knoweth his going down. I agree that that has been a very difficult verse to get to the bottom of. But when you take the words one by one apart in the Hebrew and add their meaning, then you see we're blowing up a shofar in the new moon when the day is concealed. The day is concealed at night. He has an ohel that he goes in as he sets. That's what the psalm likens it to. And he has a chuppah, a canopy. He comes out when it rises. And during the time between he's in that ohel or that chuppah, he's concealed.